I'm Bill Rosemann.
Hello.
Creative Director at Marvel Games.
Executive Creative Director.
Executive Creative Director. I've been lucky enough to be working at Marvel for just hit my 20th year, over 20 years, between freelance work and on staff. Used to be involved marketing comics, writing comics, editing comics, and 3 years ago joined the Marvel Games team. So now I help, my job at Marvel Games is to try and make the games as authentically Marvel as possible. So what does that mean? I want to, well, first of all, at Marvel Games, I kind of reassembled the team about 3 years ago and took a step back and said, what do we want to do? And we said, you know, we don't want to try and do, you know, adaptations anymore, you know, the game of the movie, which is very challenging to do because you're creating a game at the same time that you're creating a movie, and it's very difficult to capture that feeling and to have all the ref and know where that's going. And on top of that, we want to really respect, what are we making? We're making games, and respect the medium. And making a TV show is different from creating a movie, which is different from creating a comic book. So what we do is we look at everything, we blend it all together, and we try and work with the best partners to let them tell their story. And we give them all the ingredients, and they create the meal. So our job is to take our best characters and pair up with the best partners, and they decide what kind of game they want to make. And then we do everything we can to collaborate with them and give them reference and brainstorm and knock things back and forth, help bring in the best talent to create the best games we can for the best fans. So that's what I do at Marvel Games. And I'm lucky enough to work with Kurt on this game.
I'm Kurt Busiek. I'm an executive freelance layout. This is my 35th year in comics. I sold my my first comic scripts just before I graduated from college. I made my first sale on a Thursday, and college graduation was that weekend.
That's a good weekend.
And my very first comic book published, actually, Green Lantern 162 and Power Man and Iron Fist 90 came out the same day.
Nice.
So I debuted at Marvel and DC simultaneously, back before you were born.
What was on the cover of that Power Man and Iron Fist?
It's Eunice the Untouchable.
Cool. That was one of my favorite series.
And now they're on TV.
Yeah.
So I'm one of these best partners that he keeps talking about. Just
right.
You know, it says it on my house. It says best.
Executive best.
And I worked with TT Games on this game because, well, it's a Kang game, and you know, when they went through the Kang material that Marvel has published, looking for what would be the best stuff to use in a game, they quickly focused down on the Kang Dynasty and Avengers Forever, which are the two big new Kang stories I wrote. So when they wanted somebody to consult with them and help make it, as you put it, as authentically Marvel as they could, I believe you suggested,
yeah.
Why don't you get the guy who wrote those stories? And so they did, and here I am. With you.
Kurt's right. We gave him a ton of material. Remember, it was 2 San Diego Comic Cons ago. We sat down, and it was Arthur. We began to talk about the next game, and he said, "We really want to do something with Kang." How come? Well, we're really intrigued by all the different timelines. I'm like, okay, yes. And so we started talking about what makes Kang cool, what is he about, what does he want, what are some of his best stories. And so then we went back to the office and we just started doing lists of stories. We just sent them everything. We just went through all the Kang appearances and just picked up a ton and sent them. And I was so happy when they came back, when they brought up Avengers Forever, because that was one of my all-time favorite stories. Kurt wrote, Kurt Busiek drew it, and for me, it really showed me what Kang was all about. And to see him not just sitting back in his invisible recliner from the future.
We call that the air chair.
The air chair. What's cool about Kang is he wants to conquer, but he wants to do it in the field. And what I just learned a few moments ago that Kang's name is based on Genghis Khan. Should have known that. But like Genghis Khan, Kang wants to be in the battlefield, leading the charge. So I remember in Avengers Forever, he was in these scenes of him in the front with his big muskets and he's firing away and showing that, yeah, he's not just a schemer who's going to sit back and direct his armies. He's going to go out and lead, and he's not going to just travel through time to a moment when the Avengers were like babies and beat them up. He wants to face them in the battlefield at their prime, so he can say, I am Kang the Conqueror, and I beat them when they were at their best. And that is a really intriguing and fascinating character to us. So I'm so glad they said, we want to focus on these stories, and they said, could we get a Marvel writer who could help us stitch them together? Because Kang can be very complicated in all its iterations and stories, and so let's the guy who wrote it the best, and see if he's interested. And luckily the stars aligned, and here we are today.
I did some readings.
Yes, that's a big difference. Okay, it's Ursa Major who's in the game. So, what else can I say? This is a follow-up to Marvel Superheroes, and what's very cool is at the very end of that game, there's a little bit about the Guardians. They were at the very end, and they were coming to Earth, and no, they had a call and they're going into battle. And when this game opens, it begins with them, so it's a direct connection, and they go to Xandar, and they're being attacked by Kang. We brought from your Kang Dynasty story his big ship, the floating Damocles sword-shaped ship. So ripped right from the comics, there it is in the game. And so it was very fun to go through, like I said, everything Marvel. We looked at Kang's appearances in cartoons, and has our characters have appeared in film, and has our characters appear in comics, and blend it all together and give all the ingredients to games and Kurt, and said, you know, put it all. What do you want to do? And at the heart of it, what we can get into is what Kang is doing, what he wants to do, and what he builds. We're talking about Chronopolis and all those cool things that unlocks. But maybe we should do some questions. Maybe that can lead to.
Yeah, shut up.
I'm done talking. I'm done.
Who's got a question?
So I got a question, but I kind of want to let these guys get in and talk about more of the game, because when you talk about the game, I think the question kind of.
Okay. Well, why don't we do a couple questions?
Yeah.
We'll come back.
I wanted to put the cliffhanger in there.
All right, nice.
Okay.
Now I'm intrigued.
So when you put the story together, did you find it easier? Do you find it easier to write a story for like more like made for like kids, I guess, as opposed to writing, I guess, more of a serious Marvel story?
No. I find that, writing the comics as opposed to working on the game was much easier because it's very linear. Because I have a story I want to tell. I get to figure out how to tell it, and, I'm working with an editor, an artist. We've got, inkers and letterers and colorists, but in terms of working on the story, it's me, it's the editor, it's the artist, and that's really it. And whether it's a story for kids or whether it's a story for adults, it's still a nice, tight, focused process. A game is fractal. It's big, it goes in many directions. I was collaborating with the TT Games guys. We started with material that I wrote for the comics, but then, they sort of jammed it together into this big superstructure, and then I was able to go in and say, well, we don't need this, and we don't need this, and this is a nice scene, but it's done to set up scenes that you're not actually going to do, so let's modify it to set up scenes you are actually going to do, and make Kang's motivation clear for this. So I felt like in some ways I was kind of a mechanic, a structuralist, creating the opportunities for them to come in and say, and now we do the gameplay. And I didn't really have much to do with the gameplay. There were a few moments where I would say, I think that this game sequence should be about accomplishing X, or here at the end, I think you should do this incredibly elaborate, hugely complicated thing, and they simplified that down. But for the most part, my job was make the larger structure of it work, so that it creates the context for all of this gameplay, and the gameplay was largely their territory. So it was a lot of handoff and we need this, how do we set this up? Hey, we should do something like this to pay off the character stuff. And so there's a lot more back and forth in building a game. It's much more of a team operation than the comic, which is a much simpler, cleaner, clearer, smaller group of people.
And from the Marvel perspective, we tell stories for all ages. And I remember growing up that it felt
96.
Even 96.
That's an age.
From 6 to 96. When I was growing up, I felt that Marvel respected my intelligence, and I never felt they were talking down to me, no matter how old I was. They were always asking me to step up. And so as I aged, I had to figure out vocabulary words and story words and story concepts. And so with the game as well, we're creating it for all ages. We know kids are going to be playing it with their parents, and we know kids are really smart. And so we want to make it work on all levels, so that you make, just like with comics or cartoons or TV or stories and movies, you come in and you may be first attracted by just the spectacle and the action, and the costumes are cool. But maybe the older you get, or you begin to appreciate the layers. So all of our stories, everything we do is all baked in layers, and you begin to appreciate deeper concepts. What is the story about? What is the theme? Is there really something going on beneath it? Is this really a metaphor for some bigger idea? As I begin to understand these characters, I really get to know what they're about and realize how human they are, and start relating to them in a different way. So we always try and respect our audience, whether they're readers or gamers, players, and we want to deliver something that makes sense to all ages, and ask you to step up. And try and be as smart as possible, because we know people are smarter than us, and so we gotta step up and deliver something that's really cool and layered and fun.
Also, the experience is going to be different from different perspectives.
Sure.
One thing that there's part of the gameplay takes place in the Old West, and I remember saying, for the action here, there's a character who isn't actually connected to Marvel's Old West setting. A character called the Wild Bill Robot, but I think you should have this here because he's visually cool and he's fun and would make for great gameplay. And so, somebody my age playing this game, when Wild Bill Robot shows up, they may go, "It's Wild Bill Robot, I remember him, he's so cool." And to a 7-year-old, they're going to look at Wild Bill Robot, they're just going to go, "Neat!" They don't need to know the character's history, they don't need to know that the character even, for all they care, the character could have been made up for the game. It fits the module, it fits the setting, it's fun. And somebody who's really steeped in Marvel lore will remember when Captain America fought this guy in Jack Kirby stories, and appreciate that it's a deep dive into Marvel history. We don't care which way you approach it.
Yep.
As long as we want it to work both ways.
And I want that to be my new nickname, Wild Bill Robot. Heard it here first.
What I enjoyed about the first game is that a lot of the dialogue, they seem to almost play up some of the sort of tropes we know of these certain characters a little bit. Is there more of that this time around? Because these characters, you sort of exaggerate a little bit of what we come to know these characters have?
Yeah. They're the characters' differences and foibles and mistakes and ego and so forth. There are parts of it that I think are like cool high Marvel drama where you're really getting into the soul of the characters, and there are parts that are kind of knockabout comedy where you're dealing with these characters are in some way knuckleheads. So the full gamut is in the game.
There's moments of great drama, and there's moments where Rocket throws chickens at Kang. That's his weakness. They peck at his face. Or at MODOK. He threw them at MODOK, and MODOK's oh, you monsters, not chickens. And I think both at TT Games and Lego and Marvel are all known for our humor, and we don't take ourselves seriously. And so it is fun to throw all these characters together, and as you say, kind of play them up and kind of poke at what's goofy and fun at them, but at the same time respect them.
Yeah, of course. I like that. You guys do all have so much respect for all these characters.
You do. Right. Even when you're doing a scene where a character's being stupid, the character needs to be stupid in a way that honors their character. You know, that if Tony Stark is kind of an arrogant schmuck, well, it's because he's Tony Stark. You wouldn't do that same scene with Henry Pym. Right. You wouldn't do that same scene with Squirrel Girl. You do a different kind of scene. They have different weaknesses and motivations and ego points and so forth.
And every character is someone's favorite, So, and I think that's what especially this game does with its huge character lineup. We went so deep and we just passed lists back and forth. And the different stages of creating it, it unlocks new ideas and inspires new ideas. And so, as Kurt was saying to me earlier today, he was seeing how new scenes and characters developed, even from when we were at our last meeting at San Diego. Because what happens is, first you start with just ideas, and then it's words on a page, and then maybe it's a spreadsheet, and then it's a design, and that may inspire, what about this character, what about that character, and then it's a level design doc, and then you look at that, like, oh, it would be fun if we added this, and then they actually build it, and then you actually play it, and then that inspires more ideas. And we're always asking, can we add this and that and it's like and we just keep building.
Yeah, on a comic book page, you've only got the page. So even if you've got a 400-page story, there's only so much stuff you can fit into 400 pages. But in a video game, you've got your story structure, and you've got your characters, and you've got your scenes, and at every point you can go deeper. Because if you wanna take your Old West adventure and you wanna play it for 6 hours instead of for 3 hours, well, there's enough stuff there. That this is why I like to say it's fractal. The deeper you go in, you still have room.
Right.
You aren't confined by time or space, which is interesting for a Kang story, the way you are in a book or a movie.
So you mentioned, Avengers Forever and Kang Dynasty. Are there any major story arcs, maybe even non-Kang related ones, that were a big influence on the story?
Well, there are other Kang arcs that are important, like Chronopolis is very important to the story. And while Chronopolis is a piece of Avengers Forever, Chronopolis got explored much more in the Mark Grunwald did a big Kang story that ran through. It was called Citizen Kang. So a lot of what makes Chronopolis cool comes from there. And in Avengers Forever, what I did was kind of restate it and say, you remember this? Yeah, okay, we're blowing it up now, and that's causing a crisis. So we step back to the earlier version to say we can do this and that and the other. We also brought in Ravonna, Kang's wife from the comics, who goes back to 1965, 66 Avengers comics. So the story that introduced her is important to this piece.
Brian Ravonna.
But there's universes like the 2099 universe and the Marvel Noir universe, Man-Thing Swamp is in this game. So there's bits and pieces of all kinds of stuff. Chronopolis is kind of like you know how Disneyland has the Cinderella Castle in the middle, and it's got Tomorrowland and Frontierland and whatever around it. Well, Chronopolis is Kang's citadel in the center, and then he's got pieces, fragments of all of the times and cultures he's conquered. So you can in the game go from I'm in Marvel 2099, and then which is all neon Blade Runner bright and slick, and then boom, I'm in Marvel Noir where everything's in black and white, and then boom, I'm in the Old West, and boom, I'm in the Kree homeworld. It's not